Yomi is Bava Basra Yud Bava Basra 19. Daf is dedicated for Shmira for the Chayalim, Salah for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. So we're going to start on the top of 19a, where our Mishnah had said that you're not allowed to soak your laundry within 3 tefachim of the wall of your neighbor. Can't soak your laundry within 3 tefachim. One of Rechet HaKovsin. So the Gemara has a para-contradiction. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua, Lo Shanu Ela Min HaMechamtzan, Aval Min HaNedayan Dawad Amos. So Rav Nachman said in the name of Rav Baravua, when we say you can't soak your laundry, there's two types. There's the Mechamtzan. That's you can't be within 3 tefachim. That's where you were just soaking the laundry. But the minadayan, and the dayan is when you like scrub it and then it sprays all over the place. That Rav Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Baravua, you need to be Dawad Amos away. You need to be 4 cubits away, which is approximately 6 feet. So that's the teaching, that it depends on the type of laundering that you're doing. If it's just soaking, it could be as close as 3 tefachim. If it's scrubbing, it has to be 6 feet. Dawad Amos. Gemara says, Tanyanami, how can we have a brisa that supports this? Nivreches HaKovsin Dawad Amos, that the laundry has to be 6 feet away from the other person's wall. But don't we have a teaching that says 3 handbreadths? So like we learned from here, like Rav Nachman, that it depends on the type of process you are in the laundering. Some raise this as some had the same discussion, but they raised it as like there was a contradiction. That's their version of it. That the Mishnah says the laundry has to be 3 tefachim away. But didn't we learn in the Brisa? Didn't we learn in the Brisa that it is Arba Amos? So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua, Lokasha, Kamin Amachamtzin, Kamin Adayin. It depends on the type of laundering. One is from the soaking, that's 3 tefachim. One is from the scrubbing, that's 4 amos. He just taught this straight out. He just adds in specifically that it's from the soaking pond that has to be 3 tefachim. Now we're up to the next clause in the Mishnah. It says that in all these cases that we mentioned, you have to distance yourself 3 tefachim from the wall of your neighbor. Visad basid, and you also have to line the wall of your neighbor. It's your responsibility to line it with plaster to protect it. So the Gemara's question is: Ibalu visad basid tanan, o dilma osad basid tanan. We read our Mishnah saying you have to do both: distance it 3 tefachim and line his wall with plaster, or one of the other. Or you could either be 3 tefachim or line it with plaster. So Gemara says, well, Pshita, isn't it obvious isn't it obvious that it means and you line it with plaster? Why do we say that? Because the Mishnah has 2 clauses. And the first clause refers to the Mishnah is referring to certain things like digging a ditch and doing laundry. And the second part is keeping away the refuse of the olives and the manure. And in the second part, it says, and it's very clear, Pshita, the Bevisa Vesitnan, the Isakadai Tachta Osa Vesitnan, and Kayla Arvinam Ninu. The Mishnah, the Gemara assumes that the second part is really a case of either or. Well, if that's the case, if the first part of the Mishnah was also either or, it should have just written the 2 parts together. For the fact it doesn't write the 2 parts together, it's clear that they're 2 different cases. One is you do this and line it, and the other one is you do one or the other. Gemara says, no, that's not a case. No, it's possible. The reason why the Mishnah didn't put them together is because the 2 types of damages occurring are not the same. Reisha zeka de metuna, seifa zeka de avela. The first cause is the damage of moisture, and the second part is the damage of heat. And so therefore, the Mishnah didn't include them together. We're still trying to answer this question. Tashma, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Sel Ababi Adayim, it's a type of earth. Zecho for Boro Mikan, Zecho for Boro Mikan. Each one could dig the well on their side of the field, their side. Zemarchik Gimel Tfachim, v'sad v'sid, v'zeh marchik gimel tefachim v'sad v'sid. So each one distanced himself 3 tefachim from the neighbor's property and lines the wall with plaster. So therefore, we see from here that in that case, that you have to do both, because it says v'sad v'sid. You need to do both. So clearly, it's each one's responsibility is to do both. And Gemara says no, maybe that case is different. Taima the babi adayim. That's because that case is especially soft earth that crumbles in your hands. Hello, babi adayim. Whoa. So, but if it wouldn't be, Gemara says, well, doesn't that therefore then imply that if it wouldn't be something that crumbles in your earth, you wouldn't have to also line it? And Gemara says, no. Babi adayim it's teaching us this chiddush that of where the earth crumbles. Sakadai techamina. I might have thought that keeping the babi adayim by revacha tvei. I might have thought you needed to be even farther away because it's especially soft earth. Kamashman, we don't say that. Okay, so the Gemara now says the second case of the Mishnah was marchikines agefes v'sazevel v'samelech v'saslayim. You have to take the olive refuse, the manure, the salt, and this type of earth from your neighbor 3 tefachim, or you have to line it with So the Gemara says, well, let's compare this scenario, the types of materials listed here, to halacha about Shabbos, that on Shabbos, you're not allowed to wrap the food in a type of material which will increase the heat. And Rashi says, because the concern is you might come to stir the coals. So we learned there in the Mishnah in Shabbos, Bameh Tomnin, with what are you allowed to, or 19a in the middle, with which items are you allowed to insulate your food on Shabbos? And with what are you not allowed? You're not allowed to insulate it with the refuse of the olives, with the manure, with the salt, or the lime, and not with the sand, whether any of these items are whether they're wet or whether they're dry. So the Gemara's question is, Ma'ishna hacha the katani salayim will katani chol, Ma'ishna hasam the katani chol will katani salayim. So the two lists are nearly identical, but in the case of our Mishnah here, it lists salayim, which is a type of like crumbly earth, and in the case of Shabbos, it lists chol, which is sand. So what's the difference? And in our case, which it talks about the heat that these items give off, it lists dirt, and there lists sand. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef. So we're going to have 3 answers to this question. First is that Rav Yosef says, people don't use earth to insulate; they use sand. So what do you mean? You think that the Mishnah is not going to list those things? Is only going to list those things which you typically will use to insulate? But do you think people typically insulate their food with pieces of wool? And we learned the Tanya told them that we learned in the Brisa you're allowed to use these items, these woolen items, and you can't move them on Shabbos. So we see from here, so we see from here that the Tana lists also those things that you don't typically use to insulate. Why did the Mishnah Shabbos not list the earth amongst those things that you're prohibited to insulate with? So the Gemara says, Ela Amar Abaye Yagido Avreo. Abaye says the second answer is Yagido Avreo, which basically means, no, from the fact that list 1, we learn from it everything's similar. So even though the 2 lists are not identical, since they're similar, we learn all the cases amongst them. Have a good day, Harold. That we learn the other cases are prohibited. So therefore, sand is prohibited to plant near the wall, and the earth is prohibited to insulate with. So Tanacha slime v'adil chol, Tanahasam chol v'adil slime. Both cases it applies in both cases. So the Gemara says, Amrle Rava says a third approach. Iya gidol avreo. If there is this principle that we're going to apply one and apply it across the board, once it has one, if that's the case, it should list in all these cases, they should, in one of the cases, they should list all of them, and the other one, it should just list one of them. And we'll say, and then we'll know that they all apply. So if it wouldn't have listed almost all of them, it would have listed all of them in one case, and then just one in the other case. So therefore, Rava says the third answer. Why by Shabbos does it not list the case of the earth as something that you're not allowed to insulate with? Because it ruins the pot when you insulate with this earth. How does it ruin the pot, or it ruins the food? Rashi says it breaks the pot. It makes it rusty. That's what Rashi says. This type of earth makes it rusty. And what's the reason why it doesn't list the sand here? Because the sand is not so damaging. The sand is not as damaging. Good morning, guy. The sand is not as damaging. Why is the sand not as damaging? Because the sand will make the heat, it will make it hotter, and it'll make the cold cooler. And so therefore it's not prohibited. It's only prohibited by respect to insulation, because since it's insulating the pot, therefore the sand will make it hotter. But with respect to damages, then it's not going to cause damages, because since the wall is cold, then the sand will remain cold and it's not going to damage the wall at all. Gemara says, Tani Rabbi Oshaya Choba. Rabbi Oshaya has a version where he says you can't do sand. So the Gemara says, no, Hasim and Matuna. There, the Tosefta is talking about moist sand. And so therefore, since it's moist sand, it's going to be damaging from the moisture of the sand. Gemara says, well, Tana Didan Nami Lisna. Well, why doesn't our Tana list sand amongst those things that are moist? For example, which we listed those things that are moist that do damage. Gemara says, no, the Tana already listed those things that are moist that you're not allowed to have. Hatanale amasamayim. This is because it already listed those things that you can have near the wall, like a stream of water. So it doesn't need to list it. The Gemara says, yeah, but our Tana also lists, in addition to the stream of water, with other things that are moist, like laundry pond. So the Gemara says, no, it needs to list, in addition to the stream of water, it needs to list the laundry pond. Because if it had just said the stream of water, I would have said Mishum Dekfia, because it's fixed. It's always there. But the laundry pond, the low kavia, because it's not always there, I might have thought it's not prohibited. And if it just listed the laundry pond, I would say that's prohibited, because it's always remaining there. And so therefore the moisture is worse because it's stagnant. But the stream of water, I might have said low. I might have said since it's always moving, it's not going to be a problem. So tzricha, we need both cases. Now we said, it said in our Mishnah, you have to keep the seeds and the plow away from the wall of your friend. What's the reason? So the Gemara explains, well, why do you have to list both sowing and plowing? If you're going to say plowing is prohibited near the wall of your friend, for sure you can't do sowing. The Gemara says, no, it's possible. You could possibly sow without plowing by just throwing it with your hand. And so it's saying that's prohibited. And Macharisha, well, why does it need to list plowing is prohibited? You could have learned it out from the fact that since sowing is prohibited, plowing is also for sure prohibited. Gemara says, so let's say you have a tree and for some reason you want to plow around your tree, and you want to plow under them to make them better. you're not allowed to do that within 3 tefachim of the wall. The typically mishamaya, but anyway, we should say it's prohibited because you're going to need to water it, and you're not allowed to use water near the field of your friend. You're not allowed to irrigate near the wall of your friend. So the Gemara says, Tana be'eretz Yisrael kai. You know, the author of our mission is referring to the land of Israel, T'chsiv, v'matara shamayim tishteh. It says about the land of Israel that it will be nourished by the rain. Matara shamayim tishteh mayim. That it will be nourished by the rain of the sky and not by irrigation. So the Gemara says, well, okay, what we've said so far is that you can't plant your seeds near the wall of your friend because it could damage your friend's wall. But how's it going to damage it? Well, Meimra, does this mean to say the Zerayim, that the seeds are on the top of 19b? It's Zerayim, it's Dadin Kamashtarshi, that the problem with the seeds is that they're going to that the roots of the seeds are going to go sideways, and if they're within 3 tefachim, they're going to go under the wall and damage the base of the wall. But why is that a concern, Vatinan? But didn't we learn in Meseches Kalayim in the Mishnah that if there's a person, a mabriches a gefen ba'aretz, meaning to say that he takes the branches of a grapevine and he bends it down into the ground and he covers it with earth, and he waters the top of it far away, then the law is imin al gaba afar shlosha tefachim lo yavi zera. If there doesn't have 3 tefachim of earth on top of it, you're not allowed to sow on top because the seeds will go straight down into the grapevine, and that's prohibition of kolayim. Vitani alav zoreas atzedadim ve'elach ve'elach, but you're allowed to plant to the side of it because the seeds don't go sideways. So don't we see from here that the seeds don't grow sideways? So I'm Rabbi Chaga v'shem Rabbi Yossi. No, it's mimnei shemachlidin es hakarka umalin afar tichuach. No, the problem with planting seeds is that the seeds make holes in the ground, and that causes a lot of moist earth. Meaning to say the seeds themselves are not going to go sideways, and their roots won't go under the wall, but nevertheless prohibited because as a result of sowing there, you're going to make the earth around it very soft, and that causes to weaken the foundational base of the wall. Now we talk about the urine. It says that you have to keep the urine 3 tefachim from the wall of your neighbor. Can't urinate within 3 tefachim of your neighbor's wall. So Amar Rabbi Rachana, but why? Rabbi Rachana says that you're actually allowed to urinate next to the wall of your friend, because it states V'chrati la'achav mashtin bakir v'atzur v'azuv b'Yisrael. Then I will destroy from Achav all those who urinate against the wall and all those who keep their money amongst Israel. And so therefore we see from here, so since the verse says I'm going to destroy all those who urinate in Israel, it's clear that you are allowed to urinate against the wall. Because otherwise, what would the Tanakh say? We're going to knock away from Achav all those who are doing these prohibited items. So therefore, why does our Mishnah say you can't urinate within 3 handbreadths of your friend's wall when we see from Rabbi Rachana's statement it's allowed? The Gemara says, how can Rabbi Rachana say this? Now you have to distance yourself 3 tefachim from your neighbor. So the Gemara says, Hasam b'shovkin. No, when it says in our Mishnah that you have to be 3 tefachim away, that's referring to the shovkin. That's referring to the where you pour it all out in a pot. Well, when you pour it all out in a pot, then we're going to say it's much more, so that's going to cause the damage. So the Gemara says, Tashma. Let's also ask Rabbi Rachana. We're going to challenge him from the Tosefta. What does the Tosefta say? Vayashtin adam mayim bitzad kosel shel chavero amkeim hirchak mimenu shloshet tefachim. Person's not allowed to urinate next to his friend's field unless he distances himself 3 tefachim. When do we say that he has to distance himself? Because so levanim, in a wall that was made of dried clay, bricks, and so therefore when they have the urine they'll get ruined. But if it's a stone wall, yazik v'kama tefach. There, the only different distance is how much damage you're going to cause the foundation, and then you have to distance yourself by one tefach. V'shel tzuna, and if it's by everything okay, Lincoln, solve the problem. What? It needs some work. Thank you. And if it is like a wall that's built on bedrock, mutter, then you can urinate next to the wall without being too far, because the rock does not get ruined by the urine. But anyway, we see from this brisa that a person is not allowed to urinate next to the wall of his friend, unlike Rav Bar Chana, because he says that you're not allowed to urinate unless you're 3 tefachim away. So tiyufta de Rav Bar Chana, tiyufta, isn't this indeed a refutation? So we see from here Rav Bar Chana is going to be refuted. The Gemara says, well, Rav Bar Chana kraka amar. Doesn't he cite a verse? The Gemara says, Hastam hachik amar. Afilu midi de darki l'shtune bekir lo shavik noe. Umay ninu kalba. So the Gemara says, no, it's not referring to a human. It's referring to a dog. What we're saying to Achav, you're not even going to have those who remaining who urinate next to the wall. Who are those? Those are dogs. Even dogs won't remain from the house of Achav. So we see from here, you're not allowed to urinate against your friend's wall. What? No, you're not allowed. Oh, you can, even not your friend, for sure. And you can urinate against somebody else's wall. Yeah, you can urinate against a person's wall. Only, and not, even a dog will not remain from Achav. But yeah, you're not allowed to urinate against your friend's wall. So now the Gemara is going to bring in a new sugya. And because later on the Gemara is going to challenge this from some of the ideas we've been discussing. And at first glance, it's not going to be 100% clear why it's connected. But when we get to 28, it'll be clear why it's connected. So the Gemara brings a sugya with respect to the tumah of a dead body, the ritual impurity that comes from a dead body. So we have to go over some basic halachos in order to understand this, some basic general laws. So what are these general laws? So first of all, if there's a dead body that's in a house that's covered up, then this dead body is going to, here, Dr. Brazen, good morning. If you take a Gemara, my friend. So if there's a dead body we're on 19b towards the bottom. The first was, if you have a dead body in a covered house or a covered room, then everything in that room is going to become considered to be ritually impure. This is called tumas mace, the tumah of a dead body, or ol, tumas ol, from the 10th. But let's say there's 2 rooms or 2 houses. It's only going to make what's in that house tameh, but not what's in the next house, unless there's a window that's open between the 2 houses. If there's a window that's open between the 2 houses, then it will transmit the tumah between the 2 houses. So what exactly does a window mean? That's Totsu says there are 4 types of windows that we could be referring to. That one is a window that's made to be used, and that we're going to say has to be the size of a handbreadth, of a tefach. And then if you leave something there in that window, the block and make it smaller than a tefach, then it will not be able to transfer the tumah. That's the first principle. That's the first type of window. The second window is a window that's made to bring in light. And so therefore, this window is basically a little bit bigger than the size of a coin. Then there's a third type of window, which is a window that was made like, we wouldn't call it a window, but it's like a hole that was made by like water or bugs. And so that's even smaller, basically like a fist. Basically like the size of a head. And if they're, So all these cases, we want to know how much is this thing diminished, this window, which would prevent the tumah from passing through. And then the fourth was a window that was made for air or so you could watch the garden. And this is like also its own measurement. Okay, so now we go back to the Gemara. Amar Rav Tumi bar Kisna Amar Shmuel. Rakik, let's say you have a small piece of wafer. Eino mimayit bechalon. Let's say you have a window which is between the two rooms, and you want to know if the tumah of the dead body in one room is going through the window into the other room and making everything in that other room ritually impure. So you have a minimum size, let's say it was a tefach, but then you put a wafer there in between the window, and that you would think diminishes it. So we're saying no, it doesn't. That if this is a very thin wafer, it's not going to diminish it. It's not going to diminish the window, and the window is still that size. And the reason is because this wafer is capable of being eaten. It's meant to be eaten. And so therefore, it's meant to be removed from there. And so therefore, it does not diminish the window because we're going to view it as though it's not there anymore. Yeah, Bill. That's what we said. In each of the windows, there's different types of windows, and it's basically whenever it gets diminished from the size of what you would expect that window to be, then it doesn't transfer. It depends on the type of window. The first window, yes. So that's the first is the window that was made to be passing something through from one room to the other, and that's going to be a handbreadth. So the Gemara says, "My ear yarakik." Why is it only with respect to a thin wafer? I feel avanami. Even if you put a thick wafer there, like a cookie, still, since it's meant to be moved, that also should not diminish it. The Gemara says, "You're right. Lomi by kamar. It's a lomi by type of statement. Not only this, but even this. Lomi by avan. Not only a thick one." Since this wafer is so thick and everybody's going to want to eat it, for sure it's going to be removed. Not only will that not stop the ritual impurity from passing through of a rakik, but a thin wafer, the mimos, but which is nobody's going to want to eat it because it's thin, it's getting ruined by the moisture of the wall. I might think, okay, it's part of the window and it's nullified and it's going to remain there. And therefore the tumah can pass through. Kamashvan, no. Even then, since it's meant to be removed, therefore we're not going to it's not going to diminish it. But typically, so the Gemara asked the question, why does Shmuel need to say that it's not going to diminish because it's going to be removed? You could anyway learn this. Why don't we say it's something that this wafer should not diminish it because it's a food item? And so therefore it's something which itself can contract tumah. And we have a principle called davar shemekabel tumah, eino chotzitz mipnei tumah. Anything which itself can contract tumah cannot stop the ritual impurity from passing through. Gemara says no. This wafer is not able to contract tumah. Why? Because shenilush b'mei peros. It was kneaded with fruit juice. That generally speaking, a food item only becomes capable of becoming ritually impure when it's when it was mixed with liquids of one of 7 liquids, which are wine, honey, oil, milk, dew, blood, and water. And so since this was mixed with, let's say, fruit juice, therefore it's not capable of becoming tumah. So the Gemara says, well, again, let's challenge Shmuel's position that anything that in the future you're going to remove will not be able to diminish the size of the window and thereby prevent the tumah from passing through. Meisvei, we learned in the Mishnah in Olos, Kupa moya tavim v'chavis moya gronos amunachim v'chon. Let's say you have a basket filled with straw or a barrel filled with dried figs that are placed in the window. Rowan kol shilu yinatlu v'yicholin tavin grogros lamod b'fnei atzman. Anything that if you would remove the basket or the barrel and the straw and the figs could stay on their own, chotzitzin, they stop the ritual impurity. Vimlav and chotzitzin. But otherwise, they don't. So we see from there that if it's enough to stand there, it will stop the ritual impurity, even though it's possible that they're going to be moved. But why do we say it stops it? Why are we worried he's going to take the straw to feed it to his animal? And so therefore it shouldn't stop the ritual impurity. So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about sarya, rotted. It's talking about rotted straw. The animals aren't going to eat it. Well, the Gemara says, but still, chazil tina. You could use the rotted straw to make like tar. The Gemara says the ispe coating. No, there's thorns in it, and so therefore you can't make tar from it. Well, chazil hasaka, you could use it as fuel. The Gemara says bimituna. No, it's moist, so you won't. The Gemara says still, even though it's moist, chazil hasaka, you could use it for a big fire. Even the moist will burn in a big fire. Gemara says no. That's not common. Gemara says, but still, grow sachazuei. Gemara says, but still, the figs, you can use the figs. And Gemara says, you can eat them. No, we're talking about figs that were wormy. Wormy ones. Gemara says, well, still, what type of barrel are we talking about? If we're talking about a barrel where the mouth of the barrel is facing outward, to the side where there's no dead body in that room, well, then itself should be able to be a interposition. Because since it's a clay barrel, it won't become tameh. And the puma gavo. So we're talking about a case where the opening is facing the dead body, and so therefore the barrel is becoming tameh, and so therefore it's not able to serve as an interposition. The Gemara says v'bayasema, or alternatively, or olam de puma labar, or maybe the mouth is facing away from the dead body. It's the metal barrel, and that can become tameh even from the outside, and so therefore it's not able to serve as an interposition. All right, we'll stop here. This is today's daf, a beautiful daf. We'll pick this up tonight. A yasha koach.